Hello, my name is Mitch Tidwell, and I want to take you through an exercise called Peaks and Valleys. This exercise was created by Brian Fry. You can find the exercise on the collegiatecollective.com. But this is an exercise that's great as an icebreaker. It will help open up the room for a retreat or a leadership meeting and really foster community with your group. This exercise, depending on the room and it's probably going to take between 45 minutes to an hour. If you got a lot of talkers, probably a good hour. But I hope you enjoy this exercise, and I hope it is fruitful in your ministry. Each other. So here's what you need. I'd say for however many leaders in your room, get tear sheets for them. Get markers, probably big permanent markers, or even just regular Crayola markers, whatever you want. But just get them some big markers so they can see as they write on their page. And so here's what I do: I'd open up the room. It's probably good to even have just like some music overhead, just to kind of set the kind of setting and kind of tone of the room. But have everybody grab a tear sheet, have everybody get a marker, and say, put your tear sheet on the wall, grab a marker, and put your name on the top. So you just write my name, and then have them do this. So take your tear sheet and draw a line right down the middle. And what I want you to do is I want you to draw a mountain range. So the mountain range, draw your best mountain range. You can be artistic as they want. They can be as simple as they want. But say I want you to draw a mountain range with at least 5. If you have an hour, I'd say draw 5 peaks. If you have only about 45 minutes to 30 minutes, do 3 peaks. But for this scenario, we're going to do 5 peaks. So have them draw a mountain range with 5 peaks and 5 valleys. All right, and so some people, give them some time to do that. Some people are going to be really artistic. Some they're going to look just like this, but they could put some snow caps on them, just whatever. It's actually kind of a cool time to really see. I feel like in these drawings you can really see people's personalities and just kind of the things that they like. So anyways, but let's start here. So here's what I would typically do in this situation. We have them put their name, we have them draw the 5 peaks, and then we say, all right, what I want you to do next is I'm going to give you 3 to 5 minutes. And I want you to think of the 5 high moments or the peak moments in life that have shaped you into who you are today. So these are the best moments, mountaintop moments. If you could just live every day in these moments, you would, kind of thing. And so when I think about the 5 peaks in my life, by the way, what I'm going to do is I'm going to run through this myself to help you just kind of see how it goes, and then I'll give you some tips after each section. So we'll run through these 5 peaks. So for me, it was 1994. My family had been in a lot of turmoil up to that point in my life. In 1994, we moved away from where we were living, and then that's when things really began to change in my family's life, and things really started to get better. So that was a big kind of peak moment in life. Another one was my time when I got saved. It was a big moment, life-altering moment for me when I was 23. Shortly after that, another big moment was when I was called to ministry. At this point in time, me and my family have been running a restaurant, and this was just a significant shift in my life that has really landed me where I'm at today. And so, 94, saved, called to ministry. My next one was when I started working for the Southern Baptist of Texas Convention. That was my first ministry opportunity. I started here as an intern at the SBTC as an intern, then assistant, and now I'm our collegiate associate. And just a big, life-altering, changing moment for me. It's really been a process. But then my last one was marriage. When I prayed, when I got saved, I spent about 7 years of singleness, and about that from 5 years on, I began to really pray and ask God for a wife. And I started fasting and prayer, and God finally gave me a wife she's just awesome. Her name's Olivia. She's a wonderful, wonderful woman. And so these are my 5 peaks of life. These are moments in my life that have shaped me into who I am today. They've completely changed my life. Now, here's the thing is when you're taking students through this, students or young people will have a harder time with this area. And I think it's people in general will have a harder time talking about the peaks And so you'll need to help them process that. And so typically what I would suggest to you is you personally go through this yourself so you can identify the moments in your life. And especially if you're going to be talking to college students or young adults, think about the peak moments in your life that happened up until that age. Because there are going to be some things you could write, oh, when I had a child, or when we got out of debt, or things like that that really aren't relevant for them at the age that they're in. So think about things that are relevant for them in their age. And these things can be spiritual, they can be ministerial, they can just be anything. Like you're going to have some kids that you say, maybe like they won a state championship or they won some prize. Or even, I found that really, again, that sometimes students have a hard time with this or young people have a hard time with it. And so sometimes I'll tell the students and they'll laugh about it, but I'll say, hey, you were born. That's a big deal. You're here because of that life-changing moment. So help them think through. You may have to coach them through in this 5 minutes that they go through this, coach them through some things in their life. And so you can do that by even sharing your own experience. And so then I transition. After that 3 to 5 minutes is over, I transition and I say, hey, after every peak comes a what? A valley. And so now I want you to write down your 5 just low points in life, that these are the low points in life that have shaped you into who you are today. What is it? And so these are things that, they may have ended up being good over time, but in the moment they were really hard to go through. For me, one of the first ones, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, one of mine was from when I was born, 1986 to 1994, my home life. Man, my house was chaotic. It just was not a good place, and it really was a hard and difficult time for our family. And eventually, obviously, it led to a peak because we moved, and that's when things began to change. But that was a really low point in life for me. A lot of just different things in the home that weren't good, that were really tough. So that's one of them. The second one is this, and I think this may be everyone's, but middle school. We moved in 94. I gained some new friends in elementary school, but when I went to middle school, our district started growing, and so a bunch of my friends went to one school, and I had to go to another where I didn't have many friends. Introverted kid, didn't like meeting new people, and so when I did that, it was really hard for me. It was a transition. I was afraid of making friends. I was afraid of rejection. All that stuff happened, and so middle school was a really kind of tough time for me. This third valley was years 18 to 23, just this time of lostness. So I graduated from high school until 23. I just kind of spent call it my wilderness wandering years, where I was just trying to figure out who I was, trying to figure out my purpose. We started a business during this time. It actually went well, but I still felt this emptiness and like, what am I doing with my life kind of thing. And so that was a really hard time of just me getting into really deep, dark sin. And it was just not a good time in life. So that was one. The second one, or the fourth one, was post-salvation. So this post-salvation one, after I had gotten saved, things just began to change. Really, it was good, but what happened is my entire social network began to change. Friends began to leave. My roommates left. Not so much just because I got saved, but it was just a big transition. God was kind of cleaning out my life, and a lot of these things that were familiar to me were beginning to change, and it was really hard. I felt so alone during that time. God eventually brought me community, but there was about a year or so after I had gotten saved that was really a tough moment in life, because I was learning how to be a new creation. I was learning how to live as a child of God, and it was it was a transition. And so that was a really tough time. And here's my last one. Here's the fifth one. You may think this one's kind of goofy, but this is really going to hit home for college students or young people. Is I was rejected by a girl. I was rejected by a girl. So it seems silly, but here's the deal. Remember, I grew up as an introverted kid, transitioned to middle school, didn't like meeting new people. I just was afraid to ask a girl out, because what if she said no? Like, that was like the ultimate thing. Like, she said no, my world was going to end. So I got to this place where I found this, I began to get to know this girl. I thought, man, I believe this is the one that maybe God has for me. And I just thought like, man. And so I felt this confirmation from the Lord to pursue her. Well, I did. And guess what? She said no. And I was like, God, where are you? God, why are you forsaking me? Began to think all these things, like you told me to pursue her, but yet she said no. And so that was a hard moment, learning how to deal with rejection and being okay with it, learning how to deal with rejection and being confident. I learned a lot about identity during that season, but it was a really, really hard time. And so what you'll find in this exercise is young people are probably going to have a harder time with this area, but this is going to be a pretty easy area for them to think about. Not for all, but for some. People tend to hang on more to those low moments in life than those high moments in life. And so what I recommend, again, that you go through this exercise as well, so that way when you're talking about each of these low moments, that you can come back during this time when you give them 3 to 5 minutes to think of this, for you to help, kind of express, give them an illustration of a low moment in your life so they can identify with it. What you'll find with a lot of young people, they're going to deal with death, they're going to deal with divorce, they're going to deal with financial stresses in the home. There's going to be those kind of things that they're going to deal with as a young person. And so this will be really helpful for you as a leader because it helps you get to know them as well as you see their tear sheet. So here's what you do next. So 3 to 5 minutes up here, 3 to 5 minutes up here, and then this is what you tell them to do. Say, all right, I'm going to give you 5 minutes. I want you to take your tear sheet and I want you to find someone you don't know or you don't know very well and share your tear sheet with them. But here's a rule. You can't be a me monster. That's what you tell them. You can't be a me monster. Here's what a me monster is. It is a me monster is someone who takes up the entire time and doesn't let the other person talk. So don't be that. So have them go through there. Say, hey, I want you to share your 5 peaks, your 5 valleys. And I'm going to give you each got about 2.5 minutes starting now. I'm going to get them 5 minutes. And this helps people get to know each other. This helps people talk with each other. And really, it really just kind of helps bring everybody together. So give them 3 to 5 minutes to do that. Another note I would say is that when you're talking, when you tell them to list their 5 valleys, sometimes people will put some pretty transparent and vulnerable stuff on here. So make sure before you share this is something I do, but I would say, hey, I want you to write down your 5 valleys, but be aware at some point this evening, you're going to share this information with other people in the room. Now, I want you to be as transparent and vulnerable as you can, but I also, if there's some sensitive things that you don't want somebody else to know right now, don't share that. And so just kind of preface it that way. That way, because you don't want to embarrass or shame somebody if they, put something that really bad that happened, maybe within their family, and then they didn't realize they were going to have to share that with somebody. So just a preface. So, all right, so they're sharing with each other. You give them 3 to 5 minutes, and you say, all right, now come back. Here's what I want you to do next. I want you to put a circle up here, just anywhere at the top of their sheet. Put a circle, and I want you to put a circle at the bottom. And here's what you're going to ask them. All right. I want you to take everything, you take each of these things that happen in these 5 peaks, and I want you to kind of bring them all together. I want you to synthesize all that information and think, what is the one thing that God is teaching me or has taught me through these 5 peak moments in life? And so give them 3 to 5 minutes to think about that. Again, this may be hard for more kind of detail-oriented people. For the intuitives, they can kind of bring all this together and see a big vision. So you may need to coach some people on it, kind of go alongside them and help them think through this. But for me, here's this, is that for my peace, the one big thing is that God is sovereign and gives all good things. So when I look about these peak moments in my life, they were completely out of my control. God was in complete control. I literally had nothing to do with it. When we moved, out of my control. Saved, out of my control. Called to ministry, out of my control. Just God's movement in my life. SBTC, completely out of my control. Marriage, definitely out of my control. Married out of my league, for sure. And so here's what I've learned is that God is sovereign. that in the best moments of my life, my hands weren't on the wheel. God was in complete control, and he's the one that gives good things. So I don't have to worry about creating these peak moments in my life. I don't have to worry about that. Why? Because God is in control of all that. I just need to be faithful to him. So give them 3 to 5 minutes to think about that, and then say, hey, okay, now another 3 to 5 minutes, I want you to think about, what have you learned in your valleys? What's synthesized, bring all that together. What have you collectively learned through those valleys? And here's is what I've learned, is that rejection is one of my biggest fears. It's one of my biggest fears. When I think about home, a lot of rejection right here. Think about middle school, a lot of rejection, was afraid to meet new people, afraid to be rejected. Lostness, I felt really dejected, not rejected, but I just felt like man, like, who am I? What's my purpose? I just felt kind of like a reject. I don't know any other way to put it. And then post-salvation, again, people began to leave. I felt rejected. And then obviously rejected by girls. So that's a theme in my life. Like the lowest moments of my life are when I feel rejected by other people. And so for me, that's a big barrier for me. Like, I need to be aware of that when I go into new places and I go into new things, that rejection is a real fear and a barrier for me to be faithful to God. And so I really need to be aware of that. So those are my 2 big learnings. You'll give them 3 to 5 minutes in each of those, maybe 3 minutes for those. Have them write those down, and then have them do this. So draw another line, draw it about kind of halfway down the second half here. And then I want you to draw 3 boxes. And then here's what I want you to put. You'll say, based on your peaks and valleys and your learnings, so based on this information right here, here's what I want us to do, is what 3 areas has God specifically equipped you to disciple others strongly? So now we're synthesizing, we're bringing all this information together. What are the 3 strengths we now have based on life experiences that help us to disciple others? The first thing for me is, I'd say faith. It's faith. God's sovereignty. I've seen God's sovereignty move in my life, even in my even as a young man. I just seen God move in his sovereignty, and so I've learned, like, being faithful to God is what matters. Being faithful is what life is about. And so I feel like I can be an encouragement to people to say, hey, man, be faithful, because God will always be good. Even in hard times, man, God is good, and he's taking you through seasons of life, but he's always for your good, always for his glory. So faith is a big deal. The second one is this, is helping people understand their identity. So identity. When I think about, this rejection that's forced me into learning, trusting in that I'm not who other people say I am. I'm not who I think other people think that I am, but I am who God says I am. And so I'm trusting in my identity as a child of God rather than what people think or believe about me. And so I think identity is really a strong suit for me as I disciple folks. And the last one is this, and it is contentment. Contentment. So one of the big things for me was when I got saved, I had this period of about 7 years of singleness, and so I really was on this journey of how to be content in singleness, which you're going to face when you're discipling young people. That's going to be a big deal. Well, I really wrestled with God over that period of time of learning how to be content and single, and learning how to leverage my life for God's mission and to advance the gospel. And so I feel like that's really a strong suit that I see in my learnings. And so those would be the 3 things that I would share. And so here's what we do now. So we've shared part 1, which is the peaks, the valleys. We've shared part 2, which is our learnings from the peaks and valleys, and our 3 strengths of how we disciple people based on life experiences. And so now what I would have you do is say, all right, I'm going to give you 5 minutes, take your tear sheet again, find someone you don't know or don't know well, and share your tear sheet with them, and give them 5 minutes to do that. And so let them do that. Again, don't be a me monster. And here's the thing, you can go over that 5 minutes if you have the time. If they're talking pretty well, that's awesome. I will make a note here. So you're going to find that when you pair two introverts together, they're probably going to go through this really quick. They're just going to just boom, 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 and then they're going to sit there and look at each other really awkward. That is okay. Don't break that up. Let them sit there, because eventually what's going to happen is like, this is so awkward. Let's just talk. And they'll get to know each other, and that really helps them open up and just create a better atmosphere. So don't be afraid of that silence with people. So yeah, give them 3 to 5 minutes to share that information. Then you move on to our last section here, which is this. We're asking the question. Have them go back to their sheet, take this line, and then here's what I want you to do is to put a line right here down the middle, break it up into 2 different boxes, and ask this question. Say, what has been your greatest accomplishment in life to this date? That if you died today, what would be your greatest contribution? Your greatest contribution. Now, if you're doing this with young people, you've got 18 to 25-year-olds, 18 to 22-year-olds, whatever. Not a lot has happened. I mean, there's been a lot that's happened in their life, but not any great accomplishments per se, but really help them think through, okay, what have I done to make an impact on this world? Just help them think through that, and maybe and share an example of something that you've done. When I think personally about me, one of the things is I started an event called Texas Roundup, and man, we've been able to network the state. I believe we've been able to push ministry forward because of this great network that we've been able to establish. So that would be mine. It would be networking college leaders. So networking college leaders, I think, would be one of my great contributions. And so give them 3 to 5 minutes and think about that. Maybe just 3 minutes. I mean, if you want to do 5, you can. So 3 to 5 minutes, do that side. And then when they're done with that, come over here and ask them this last question. Say, think about your wiring as a leader, your peaks, your valleys, your learnings. Think about all this information you put together, and then ask this question. What is your dream for what God would allow to be your greatest contribution of your future? Let me repeat that. What is your dream for what God would allow to be your greatest contribution of your future? And so basically, like, what's the legacy? What's the tombstone statement that you want to put, that you want people to know about you? Like, at the end of your days, what can be said? And here's what I put on mine. When I kind of bring all this together, is this right here. Is I want to help churches walk in faith and live out their God-given identity as Plan A to reach the world. All right, so again, what has been your greatest contribution? What do you want to be your greatest contribution? Help churches walk in faith and live out their identity as Plan A to reach the world. Give them 3 to 5 minutes to do that. And then after that, you say, again, take your tear sheet, find someone you don't know or don't know well, and share your tear sheet with them. Yeah, again, give them about 5 minutes, help them go through that. And then I would say at the end, say, after you share, I want you both to take a moment to just pray about each other. So just say, hey, maybe as I'm sharing this tear sheet with somebody, say, hey, would you pray that, man, this would be true of me, that I would help churches, walk in faith in their identity as Plan A to reach the world. Would you pray that God would, just fulfill that, in me? And so have them each do that, pray for each other. And then here's what I would do is you end this as a leader. You could leave everybody standing around the room, standing around their tear sheets. Or you could have them bring them back, sitting down, whatever setting you have them in. And I'd ask this question, man, what did God teach you through this? Because for a lot of young people, they have never taken the time to think through the last 18 to 22 years of their life, if this is a college student. They've never stopped to really reflect on the big picture of what their life has looked like. So this is going to be very eye-opening for them. And they're going to see patterns in their life and see that, man, God is creating a story, that we really are his workmanship, that he is creating us, and he's taking us on this journey that are forming us into who we are today. And even when they look back and they see all those bad things, they see that, hey, God has actually brought some good through it, and he's actually equipped me to be a disciple maker by my life experience. That's how we're all kind of unique. And so ask them, say, hey, what has God taught you through this? So just kind of throw that question out. Feel free to just kind of let it sit there, even if it's in silence just for a little bit, but let them ask that question. And then say, hey, what did you learn about yourself? Let them talk about that for just a second. And then I'd say, hey, what have you learned from another person? Because here's where you're going to find is that some people are going to feel like they're out on an island with an issue in their life, or a pain in their life, or something like that, or even a high moment. But when you allow them to meet and talk to each other, what they're going to realize is they're not alone. That there are people that have experienced the same things as they have, and they can talk about it and find community in that. And so just take a moment to chat around the room, to talk. Excellent exercise as an icebreaker, as a way to open up the room and foster community with your group. I hope this is helpful.